We get a lot of questions over at Move Daily Fitness, and one of the questions that's kind of like at the top of the list all of the time is on nutrition. How do we lose weight in a sustainable way? Or how do I go about fat loss and maintaining muscle? So much of it has to do with nutrition. And I think part of that is because we have access to food all around us, right? The majority of us do anyway. And it's always in our face. It's always something we have to think about or make a decision about. And sometimes I think when we're depleted in and of ourselves, maybe we're going through a tough season of life or stressful season, uh, like we just don't have the capacity to think on top of all of that, think about food and making wise choices. And so I think understanding our emotional relationship with food is really important. I know you've probably heard those words uttered before, relationship with food, and you might be like, what does that even mean? I think it means is how we interact with the nutrition around us. And do we do things and make choices to honor our own bodies? That's what I'm trying to do on a regular basis. I don't always succeed, but it's what I'm trying to do the majority of the time. And so when I saw Tricia Nelson's name pop up, I thought, you know what? She's someone probably that I should have on the podcast and talk to her about how we really dial in this part of that nutrition journey, that emotional relationship with food. Trisha is an expert in this area and has been featured on media outlets like NBC, CBS, KTLA, Fox, and The List, and has spoken on stages worldwide. Her expertise has also been shared on top podcasts, which makes her one of the sought after voices in the wellness space as it relates to nutrition. So I'm happy to interview and have a chat today with Tricia Nelson. Let's welcome her to the podcast. So our audience knows that we are on a mission to move daily in our fitness, wellness, and nutrition. And we do that by little micro processes. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Ovid, and it says, dripping water on the stone hollows it out, not through force, but through persistence. And I think that can mean persistence in a lot of arenas. One of the things I think is a huge learning curve for women is learning about nutrition, not just about the what, but also the why. And Trisha, this is why I've invited you on the podcast today, because you are all about the why. So I'd love to start off by just hearing how you got into being an expert in emotional eating.
Thanks for having me, Tracy. Yeah, it was purely through emotionally eating. So, you
You
know,
lived it already. Yeah,
yeah,
I get
yeah. So from the get-go, I think was an emotional eater. Of course, I didn't know that. I thought I just like food, and I certainly liked food. I like to cook. I like to eat. I like to serve food to other people, go out to dinner. And so it was a big highlight for me, and that wouldn't have been a problem except that I basically gained weight easily. So by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight. And that was really hard for me. I had a roll in my tummy that I would scrunch up in my hands and imagine cutting off, like you cut fat off the side of a steak, or I even had crazy thoughts like maybe I'll get a disease where I'll automatically lose weight. So I was pretty obsessed, okay, pretty obsessed with my weight and losing weight. And yet, every diet I went on, I'd always put the weight back on. So that's how it went for me. My sister at one point came home and said, I'm an emotional eater. And I thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I'm like, I just like food. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. So basically, I started to observe my relationship with food. And like I'd go out to lunch with friends and they'd order a sandwich. It would come with fries. There's like you know, it's kind of a fast food type place, like I don't know what you'd have in BC, but like a Denny's or something like that. So they'd order a sandwich and it would come with fries. And they'd eat their sandwich and pick up their fries. I would eat my fries and pick up my sandwich, and I'd look at them like, what is wrong with them? Like, why would you leave French fries on your plate? For goodness sakes, I mean, I even ate the little burned ones.
those are the best parts. Those are the best ones.
Yeah, and then or they'd have a hot fudge sundae and they'd take a few bites and they push it away and say, "Oh, I'm full." And I think full, what does full have to do with anything? So I realized my relationship was a little bit different. And that's kind of how it went for me. And nothing I tried worked in terms of weight loss. I was a yo-yo dieter, so I'd be like down 20, up 10, down 30, up 40. And I had like five different sizes of pants in my closet as a result. So it was, that it went that way for a long time. And finally, I had a mentor who said, Trisha, your problem is not food. Your problem is not weight. He said overweight is a symptom of overeating, and overeating is a symptom of what's eating you. And he also told me I have a living problem, not an eating problem. And this is information that floored me. Granted, it did kind of resonate for me. Like I kind of, at some part of my being, knew it wasn't about the food. But I didn't know what it was about. So that's how my journey started, is I started to heal from the inside out. And then I started working with my mentor to help other people, and we did that for decades. And then I started Heal Your Hunger about 8 years ago, so I could help women really get to the bottom of why they're overeating. And it's been a wonderful ride. I've been blessed to help over 1,000 women heal their relationship with food, in a non-diet way, in a non-pharmacological way. And it's just really beautiful because when you do heal from the inside out, everything gets better, not just food, right? Like your whole life gets better. And that's, I think, what my mentor meant when he said you have a living problem. It's like the way I was living needed to change because I was using food to cope. And so that it had to change. I couldn't just change by diet.
A lot of women could probably relate to that, that we have this living problem and not an eating problem. If you would, I'd love to hear what your living problem was, because I think a lot of women, again, we struggle. We're like, why do I do this? Why can't I stop? What is going on? So if you could highlight what that was for you, I think people might go, oh, I see what it is in me now that's causing this, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. By the grace of God and the research I've done, realized we're so common. People who, first of all, I had to know I was an emotional eater. And I use the term emotional eating because it describes people wherever they are on the spectrum of disordered eating. So whether you're under eating or overeating or being super controlling about what you eat, controlling about your weight, it doesn't really matter. Emotional eaters come in all different shapes and sizes. The key is that our aberrant behaviors with food, our weird obsession with food and with weight, come from a deeper place. So they come from an emotional place. You wouldn't be restricting what you eat if you didn't feel out of control in the first place. And so this is why it doesn't really matter what somebody's size is. That's a common myth. Like you have to be like overweight to be an overeater or an emotional eater, and that's not true. So I recommend that I created a quiz that enables people to really take a look at where they are on the emotional eating spectrum. And it's really qualified by two things. The first is the amount of control that someone has. So, for instance, if you go on a cruise and you've prepaid and you're like, well, I paid for all this amazing food on the buffet, I might as well have the wine, have the cheese, have the amazing desserts. You come home and you're like 5 pounds heavier, your pants don't fit, and then you're like, okay, I got to get into action. Like I got to fit in my jeans, And so you jog extra, you work out extra, you cut out sweets, and within a couple weeks you're feeling more comfortable. That's somebody with a lot of control, and not very many consequences. 5 pounds, that's not, a terrible thing. But somebody like me goes on a cruise and I am like, oh, I paid for all this. I go hog wild. I come home and instead of like getting my act together and getting those pounds off, I spiral into this is terrible. I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? I was doing so well on my diet. And it could be weeks before I get back on track, if not months. So the 5 pounds turns into 10 pounds, turns into 15 pounds. And I'm really down on myself. And so I'm living in black stretchy yoga pants, and so that's the difference is that somebody with not very much control and mounting consequences. Because if you do the yo-yo dieting thing long enough, your body is gonna hate you. So your body is gonna talk to you in aches and pains and joint pain, and bloating and gut issues and pre-diabetes. And it's, we can't take it for very long before our bodies talk back to us. So that's somebody with, mounting consequences and very little control. So I recommend the quiz so people know where they are. On the high end of that spectrum is food addiction. Okay, so I use that word addiction because I was addicted. Any chance there was sugar or carbs, my hand was in the jar. My hand was in the bag. I was going back for my third bowl of cereal, for granola. And so I couldn't stop myself. I frequently fell out of control. And so that's more of an addictive behavior. And so just knowing where you are on that spectrum is really important. But to answer your question, through my research, identified about 24 personality traits that make up the emotional eater's personality. And when I say we're very similar, it's really true. Like you've met one of us, you've met all of us practically. And these traits, not everybody has all 24 traits, but they're very common traits. And I'll give you like the top three.
Sure.
And I call this lovingly the anatomy of the emotional eater. So these are three common traits. And the top one is people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
I've rarely met an emotional eater who wasn't a people pleaser, and
Mm-hmm.
part of that is that we just grew up wanting validation from outside of ourselves. Now, it's possible that came from a lack of a validation, right? We didn't get the love we needed. We didn't get, a strong sense of ourselves. It's not about blaming mom and dad. It's just we didn't get it. I had a good childhood, but I didn't get it. So I was looking outside of myself. Like, will you approve of me? Will you validate me? And I was running myself ragged, trying to prove my worth. And the problem with people pleasing is it not only makes you really tired because you are running circles around everybody else, trying to be the superstar, trying to get the atta girls, but then you're resentful because nobody's ever as pleased as we plan on them being. And so it's like, screw them, they're not going to appreciate me. And I pulled an all-nighter for this project, yada, yada. I'm going to appreciate myself, reward myself with the, what I like to call the I deserve it binge, and that's an example of my living problem. I'm living in a way that's creating my eating. But we don't make that connection. We're always just
Right.
like, give me the diet, tell me, how many
Yeah.
ketones I need to count and that kind of thing. It's not about the food. So that's the first trait. The second trait that's like top of the list is we have racing minds. Okay, our minds overthink everything. Like we're constantly, again, worrying about what people think of us, but also thinking we did it wrong. We're very often perfectionists. If we can't do it perfectly, screw it. We're not going to do it at all. Very black and white thinking. But our minds kind of drive us nuts, and it's exhausting. And oftentimes, food is our way to shut our minds down. But there are
Mm-hmm.
better ways, like meditation and prayer and, writing, journaling. There's healthy tools, but we always just resort to food because food works. Like
Yeah. And it's quick.
food, yeah, it's quick, it's easy, it's in the kitchen already. It shouldn't be, but it is, and we're not snacking on carrot sticks, let's be clear. It's the snacky foods, and those snacky
Sure.
foods, they add up really fast. Like
Yeah.
they bite us in the butt really fast. And the other thing that we do is we overdo. And this is connected to people pleasing, but we're always on the go. Uh we always have like the radio on, the TV on. We don't like to sit still. And this is a problem because, so many people are like, "Oh, I eat because I'm bored." I don't think it's boredom. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's an inability to be with ourselves and our emotions and our thoughts. And
Hmm.
so we are on the run all the time. That's why we're always overscheduled and over busy. And you cannot lose weight effectively that way when you're on the run all the time. Because, the more busy you are, the more, the less time you have for healthy eating, right? Making a salad is out of the question. You're stopping at the fast food place or the 7-Eleven, but also the inability to just be with ourselves, it creates stress, which leads to stress eating. And cortisol obviously affects our bodies and it affects our cravings. And so it's a trap. So, but these are the living problems I'm talking about, like how we show up in life, how we do life. And nobody's thinking about that. Like nobody's
Yeah.
thinking about the connection between how we live. I mean, stress also creates an inability or problem with sleeping. We don't sleep well. Well, when you're tired, you're reaching for food for quick energy, and so it's just a vicious cycle that we're in, but we're looking for the next diet. We're looking for the quick fix, get the weight off. But if you don't change how you're living, you'll never keep the weight off, even if you do lose the weight. And that's why people who are on medications right now are kind of scared. Like, I have to stay on this medication, or else, I mean, they know they're going to go right back to the way they were because nothing has fundamentally changed in their lives. And that's to me where we have to put the spotlight.
I totally agree with that. Again, people ask us every day, multiple times a day, hundreds of times a day, just how, do you have an eating plan? Do you have a diet? And I am so with you on this. I just love this approach because I agree. We can have that control, as you say, there's people that go on the cruise and can have control. We could have, even if we're an emotional eater, you can have a measure of control for a season, for a bit, for 30
Yeah.
days. I've got this challenge, I'm doing it, and they lose this weight. And but we haven't discussed the primary drivers. And so I love what you're saying about some of these traits that we could start to pay attention to in ourselves.
Yeah.
Am I a people pleaser? Is this something that is common for me? I've read multiple of his books, but Gabor Mate, I just mentioned him in another podcast too, but he talks a lot about just people who are people pleasers can develop certain diseases and issues. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Because we want so much to belong. We want so much to be needed or to be heard or to be valued, to be important. And if we don't give that to ourselves, we, set that out for others to give it to us. And when they
Yeah.
don't, we need it still because we're humans and we require those things. And so what's the instantaneous gratification? Food will make me feel pleasurable in the moment. Ergo, I'm going to keep going back to food.
Yeah.
So really good. Those 3 points, again, people pleaser, racing mind, and then overdoing things, always on the go. That's interesting because we're in a season of life where, well, some of us are starting to maybe slow down a bit with empty nest, or maybe our careers are taking a shift. But that 45 to 65 are some of the busiest years of our lives, right? And so part of us, if we want to succeed, if we want to like take our career to the next level, you gotta be going, going, going. So what would be your advice to someone in that realm? Like, how do we not overdo? What are some of the things that we can begin to structure in our day to day that could help us?
Yeah, I mean, I have really busy professional women in my programs. I mean, I'm thinking of one woman who's a dentist and she owned a dental practice before she came to me, and all her staff was quitting because she was so stressed out. She was terrible to work for, and grumpy and bitchy, and she felt terrible. And then she was eating at night out of guilt. And but she had to keep it all going. But what she learned in my program is to prioritize herself and to have self-care in her day. So she starts her day in with a self-care practice of meditation. She takes time early in the morning to walk, to connect with nature. It's like she fills her spiritual cup first so that everybody else gets what's in the saucer. Like that's after it's like her cup is so full, it spills over into the saucer. That's what people are getting. And people would never call her grumpy or bitchy anymore. You know, she's such a great person. But she also made changes in her life. She ended up selling her dental practice. She still works in the dental practice, but she doesn't have the burden of business ownership. We know what that's about. So she's restructured her life so that she isn't always choking for air, you know, and that's she changed her living, her the way she was living. But her self-care comes first and everything else comes after. So people may say, oh, I can't possibly do that. That's not true. We all have 24 hours, you know, and how we spend it is usually based on what we perceive is the highest and best use of those hours. Or we just take no conscious thought into how we are spending those hours. Like, is that the highest and best use? But if you consider the cost of overeating, the cost of carrying excess weight, the cost of feeling crappy about your body and not wanting to have sex because you don't want to be touched, you know, we're paying a high price, you know, in the bedroom alone, if not everywhere else, you know, setting an example for our kids that we don't want to set, you know, where we can't do all the exercises, or we can't do, you know, the fun outdoorsy thing. We can't hike that mountain because we're going to be too out of breath. So it's really important that we take a look at our priorities. How are we spending our time? It doesn't take a ton of time to make these shifts, but it
Mm.
takes conscious effort. It also takes support. It's hard to change an addictive habit alone. You know, it's virtually impossible. And I do all my programs in groups because the women relate to each other so much. You know, I did a TEDx talk called Emotional Eating: What if Weight Loss Isn't About the Food? And I start off that talk, Tracy, with reenacting my garbage eating, meaning I would sit on the couch and binge, and I'd feel so sick from eating all that food, I'd throw out the remains. And then later, when I had more room in my tummy, I'd go back and get the cookies I knew I threw out. And I was so mortified. And I thought, I am the worst person in the world. Turns out, like thousands of people, you know, commented and they're like, oh my God, I've done this too. We all think we're the only ones. So being in community with other people who are on the path of healing is so critical, especially something that we feel so ashamed about and we've been in the closet about for so long, thinking we're the only ones who have eaten the way we've eaten or done the crazy things that we've done around food and weight. So that's really important as well. Because when we're talking about changing a habit most of us have had for, you know, decades, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to take like pulling out all the stops. You know, this isn't a minimal little thing that we're going to do, boop, one little tweak and everything's fine. Like we're going to have to take some, you know, time and invest some effort, you know, invest in ourselves to be able to make these changes and get the support and get really a roadmap for this. Because otherwise, we're going to talk ourselves out of it. Like we
Mhm.
talk ourselves out of good, healthy choices every single day. Oh, it doesn't matter, or just today, or I'll eat just this one, and that one turns into a box, right? So it's like our heads are programmed to sabotage us. So we're going to have to do whatever it takes to retrain our brain, to create new neural pathways in our brain for healthier choices.
And that's going to take a while, you know. Again, coming back to the three top traits, being a people pleaser, racing mind, overdoing things, never taking time to slow down. Those are traits that could develop early childhood, and then they've worked for us. They become coping mechanisms or way to interact with our world and the people around us. And to change those is going to take a lot of sort of undoing, right? And
Totally.
so therapy is probably for a lot of people a wonderful solution for that. Not everyone, of course, could afford it because unfortunately it is expensive. But that internal look, I think, and beginning to restructure, as you said, I think is really important. Why are we resistant to that restructuring? Like, and again, women in that 45 to 65-year-old range, we've done the things we've done for years and years and years. and to think about selling a company or restructuring our day-to-day 9 to 5 on how our family functions, even in order to put ourselves at the top of the list or even on the list, seems, I'm not going to do that. My world would collapse around me. So how do we begin to move to feeling okay that restructuring is going to help us reach our goals?
Well, again, I think getting honest about the cost, a lot of times we don't realize the impact of emotional eating on our lives, the impact of carrying excess weight. We're sort of numb to it, and we're like, oh, it's okay if I don't fit in a bikini, I can wear a top at the beach or whatever, shorts, and so we poo-poo it, not realizing that every single day that we feel crappy about our bodies, every single day that we are low in energy, every single day that we spend obsessed with food. I mean, the obsession alone is costing us. I couldn't be present with my friends. I couldn't be present with my family because I'm like, boy, when they go to bed, I'm digging into that ice cream. It's like that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And we don't realize we are robbing our families of precious time and attention because we're so focused on food or on our weight. And how do we get rid of the calories that we just consumed, at 11 o'clock at night, scrolling on Facebook? So, really important that we get honest about the fact that we're not living our best lives. We're not shining our light. We're here for a reason. Like, I believe God has us here to shine our light and to be a blessing in other people's lives. But food and weight and the obsession with those things, they rob us of precious time. So I'm just saying these things in case it can wake somebody up because we are lulled into mediocrity. We're lulled into just feeling meh, because we're not taking action and we're not dealing with this very frustrating, pernicious food obsession that is, it's sapping our energy. It's definitely impacting our health. I mean, we don't, as I said, binge on carrot sticks. We binge on sugar, on processed carbs, on chips, on ice cream, on, things that have really gross ingredients. And then we're hung over and we feel crappy. And then we cancel appointments or we just kind of hide out and we don't, I mean, let alone here, okay, I'm going to on a little rant here. I love clothes. All my cute clothes were in the back of my closet. I couldn't wear them because I didn't fit in them, And so it's really important that we just realize all over the place we're paying a price. So, no, it's like you're probably not going to black out from eating sugar and hit somebody on the road. Okay. So it's not like critical like that, but it's even worse because of that, because it doesn't, force us into action. And we could go on week after week, month after month, like year after year, just living in a kind of dull, gray, not feeling great life. That's a tragedy, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the body positivity movement. So there, you look on social and this kind of seems to pendulum swing side to side with how the whole world sees it. But I'd love to know your thoughts on being comfortable loving yourself in your larger sized body.
Well, I've been 50 pounds overweight and I've been thin, and thin feels better. So I'm not going to lie, thin feels better. I think the body positivity movement spawned from the body shaming that we as a culture do. We shame people who are overweight, and that is awful, awful, awful. And I've been a second class citizen because I was obese. So I know what it's like. And at the same time, I believe the need to kind of act like we're happy being obese, I think that often comes from a frustration from trying so many diets and feeling like a failure. And so oftentimes when you've been on the dieting roller coaster ride and it doesn't work, and by the way, 98% of all diets fail, so it doesn't work for anybody except 2% of the population. When we're on that dieting roller coaster ride for decades, we are demoralized by it. We are frustrated. We are so, we turn it on ourselves. We think we're the problem, and that's not the truth. Diets can't work because diets don't give you solutions for your living problem. All they do is take away all your yummy foods, which are our coping tools. That's how we cope with life, as we turn to food. Food gets us by. Food is there for us. And so diets take all that fun away, and then it says, go get them, tiger. And that just doesn't work. It works, like you said, for a couple weeks. I could last about like 2 weeks on a diet. And then it got really hard and then I'm crawling the walls and I go back to my food. So diets don't work. We need tools for living. Diets don't give you tools for living. They don't give you new coping tools. And that's
Mhm.
what's missing. But people, who have been on that roller coaster ride blame themselves thinking they're a failure. And I say, no, you were failed. You were failed because you weren't given the proper tools and you were sold a pipe dream that if you take away all your yummy, entertaining foods, you'd be happy. No, you'll be miserable if you don't have a better way. So it's really important to know that, when we feel demoralized by the diet culture, we're not going to, I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to stop dieting and pretend we're okay being fat. That it's not that bad, it's okay, because we don't know there's a better way. We don't know there's a different path to take. And so I wholly believe that we have to learn to be in acceptance of our bodies, whatever size we are. Like that's really, really important. But it's also really, really important that we know there is a different way, a non-diet approach to feeling great in your body, whatever size you are. You can be overweight and be happy. But if you're eating crappy foods, that sap your life energy, your life force, and make you feel dull and make your skin gray and make you feel embarrassed and ashamed because you're up late at night addictively eating those foods, you can't be happy.
So that transition then from recognizing, yes, I'm 50 pounds overweight, I want to explore different tools for living. And so then maybe I start to introduce a different structure in my day, maybe more kind routine to myself. Maybe I begin to add some meditation or some moments to myself where I'm doing introspection, I'm journaling. How do we how is that movement? So the food's still going to come. Those thoughts are still going to come in that moment when I'm feeling low. So what happens? Like, how does it shift? How did it shift for you? Like, was it a quick overnight shift? Was it a slow shift? Was it a continually coming back to these concepts that, okay, I see my target in front of me. I know what I want to be. Let's just take a moment. Let's breathe. Like, what do you do to make that shift actually happen?
It's definitely not overnight. Like I've been on this road for 37 years and I'm not finished yet. So, it's a life journey. And I tell people embrace the opportunity to change your life. Like stop looking at quick fixes won't fix anything. Embrace to me, the food issue is a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call. Something is wrong. Overweight is a symptom of overeating. Overeating is a symptom of what's eating me. So let's take a look at that. And so the changes take time, introspection takes time, but embrace the opportunity to personally develop yourself. It is a personal development journey.
For
Don't be
sure.
fooled. It is not about the calories. It is not about, muscle. It's not about any of those things, protein and grams and like you're missing it. If that's where your focus is, you are missing it. This is a wake up call. And here's the thing, we all have wake-up calls in our lives. You don't have to be, an overeater for this. All God's children got problems. Embrace this problem as a wake-up call to start changing from the inside out. How am I dealing with my partner? Am I communicating or am I swallowing my words? Am I saying I'm fine? Well, you know what fine is? Effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Stop saying you're fine. Say how you really feel kindly, you know? But we have to start using our voice, as emotional eaters. Remember, I talked about the anatomy of the emotional eater. One of the top traits is that we don't say how we feel. And we expect our partners to be mind readers. So we throw around attitude when they don't read our minds properly. Well, say how you feel, say what you want. These are part of the living problem. And so, but they lead to overeating because we will eat at people like that son of a bitch. He does, he he didn't come home when he said he's gonna come home. He didn't get me
You
a
just watch me eat this chocolate bar. Yeah.
yeah, you didn't get the gift. I can't believe you forgot our anniversary. Like we eat at people all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Grow up, use your voice, use your
Yeah.
words. We tell the kids to use their words. Instead, we're throwing around, we're slamming doors and we're denying sex. And there are problems. Okay, there are problems. Stop making it about the food. Start dealing with those problems. And when you're eating, though, you don't have to deal with anything. You're numbed out. You're numbed
And
out. You're
yeah.
you're acting like everything's fine. Yeah, when I'm numbed out on sugar, everything is fine. I don't feel a thing. But if I'm not eating, I'm feeling a lot. You better have a way to deal with those feelings, a place to put those feelings. Otherwise, you're going right back to the food.
And that is just such a journey, folks, understanding why you respond in relationship, in to your environment the way that you do. Your reactions mean that something big is going on inside of you, and it's time to take that look and pay attention. I have loved this today, Trisha. Thank you so much for your insight. I think you gave us a really great ideas to begin to explore and to know thyself. I say this all of the time at Move Daily. It is so important that we begin to peel back the layers of the onion, take a look in Pandora's box, and see what's really deep inside our own souls and work with that. Because we can work with it and we can improve and make our relationship with food better. Any final words to our audience to encourage them to explore this part of their lives?
Yeah, I would say take the quiz on my website for sure, because that will tell you where you are on the emotional eating spectrum, and next steps based on that. I would say get a morning routine, start your day. Like, don't look at your phone, don't start scrolling TikTok, start your day in prayer, meditation, reading spiritual readings, like fill your soul. Your soul is hungry. It's not food you're hungry for. You're hungry for spiritual nourishment, in my opinion. And it doesn't have to be a religious thing at all. Fill your soul with what feels really good. We use food because it's a quick feel good. Take a walk in nature, like look around you, look at
Mhm.
the leaves changing, like do whatever can make you kind of breathe deeply and feel like, oh, there's a higher order to things. Like it's all gonna be okay. My little, problem that feels like a big problem isn't a big problem because it's all in order. It's all gonna be okay. My mentor used to say, you're pole vaulting over mouse turds. So he's like, it's all gonna be okay. Like it's
Yeah.
not that big a deal. Get some perspective. And so sometimes we have to scope back to get that perspective so we can realize it's all in divine order. Like it's gonna work out. The universe is in the end a friendly universe, and it's conspiring to help me have a good and happy life. But I got to get out of the way. I got to get out of the
And yeah,
way. And that's
we
the
have.
busy. Yeah, I got to address the busy and the constant running. I got to slow down, smell the roses, and take in that nourishment that I'm really craving.
Mhm. We have to care, folks. We have to care about ourselves. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And where can people find you on social media? Where are you at?
I'm at healyourhunger.com. That's the quickest way. My TEDx talk is on there. My book is on there. My podcast is on there. And also the quiz. And so, healyourhunger.com is a great place to go. It's HEAL, Heal Your Hunger. On Instagram, I'm Tricia Nelson _. And I give great little snippets of inspiration and hope and just little juicy morsels to ponder. So Tricia Nelson _.
Excellent. I will list all of those links in the show notes below. So take a look down there. Be sure to follow Move Daily Talks wherever you stream your podcasts. And we are also over on YouTube. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. And now to all of you, go move daily in your fitness, your wellness, and your nutrition. And we'll see you all in the next Move Daily Talks.